Hello everyone, welcome to the Chicago Burlington and Quincy Railroad and the Chicago and Northwestern Railway in Wyoming. Today is September 3rd, 2024, and this is Layout Update number 58. I'm Mark Pruitt, Hudson Station Agent. Work on the staging yard continued. I finished relettering one of the Milwaukee Mikados for the Burlington. I installed a turntable at Thermopolis, and I went kind of crazy on rolling stock and added 7 new cars to the layout. Amazing what you can accomplish when doctors aren't taking up all your time. Let's go look. Oh, by the way, there's a special version of the Cronkite segment this month. Be sure to see it. I was in the middle of wiring up the staging yard to the panel when last we met. I had the east end occupancy detectors wired up, with the other 2 sets still to go. I also had to replace the 2 LEDs I'd blown out. In this video clip, I'm wiring the occupancy LEDs into the terminal strip. Working around all the other wiring took some care, but once I got going, it wasn't real hard to do. The day after the last update posted, August 4th, I finished wiring the occupancy detectors. Still hadn't replaced those 2 LEDs though. Here's the scary underside of the fully wired panel. The blown LEDs have finally been replaced and the panel is fully functional. I have the panel set on a rolling wire rack stand. Makes it easy to move the panel around a bit for access, though it is limited to about 6 feet of travel. Here's the back of the panel with all the cabling and power connections neatened up as best I can do. Time for testing the yard. I already had one of my 10-wheelers sitting in staging from when I was checking track power. I added a flat car on the front end to carry my run cam to, and off I went. I ran different trains along all the tracks, watching the run cam display on my phone to look for any issues. I didn't record the video I was watching. I'm not sure you can even do that at the same time. But I did get these clips a bit later, like yesterday. I ran all the trains you'll see in staging in these clips around the staging loop. For all that, I didn't run trains both directions through every staging track. I still have to do that. Testing will continue on and off for the next several weeks. This first clip is a train running from Grable/Franny through the west staging yard throat and on across the staging yard through to the east throat. The second clip is a train running from Grable/Orrin down the helix and through the switch at Powell into the east staging lead. Then the train continues on through the east staging yard throat and on to its stopping point short of the west staging throat, where it will await its appearance on the layout during the upcoming operating session. Most of the testing that's been done so far went on during the middle of August. One thing testing has showed me is that while the occupancy detectors are fine for showing me where trains are parked in the yard, they don't give enough information about where the nose of the trains actually sit in relation to the yard throats. I needed a visual to be able to show the train wasn't fouling one or more turnouts. Fortunately, automotive backup cameras provide the solution. I bought this system off Amazon for a grand total of less than $38. With Dave's help in the middle of the month, I temporarily installed the camera at the west yard throat in just a couple of hours. That was August 13th. After looking at it for a few days, I came to the conclusion that the monitor, at 4.3 inches, wasn't big enough. The picture was fine, it was just too small. I ordered this system, which has a 7-inch monitor. This one cost a bit more, about $52.50. It showed me that the larger monitor would work, but on this one the picture wasn't very clear, so I returned it. Then I tried this one. It was just a few dollars more than the system with the small monitor, about $42. It had a much better picture than the second system I tried, and it was over $10 cheaper to boot. I installed this system on the 23rd. The monitor was just propped up at the top of the staging control panel, and the camera was clamped to a Casper yard joist. As you can see, the picture is pretty clear. I can see that all the trains are not fouling the turnouts anywhere. It's pretty dark at the west staging yard throat, so in order to get a good picture, I had to install a small light to illuminate the area. I bought one of these small 12-volt exterior step lights from Menards for about $12. I connected it to a 12-volt wall wart and mounted it temporarily using foam tape. On August 30th, I permanently mounted the camera and light after experimenting with different positions for both for a few days. I also mounted the monitor on the fascia. This is how the yard throat looks in the monitor at this point. No glare from the light anymore, and I can see the turnouts the center track connect to. Couldn't see that before. I liked the camera system so much I ordered a second one to be able to look at the area where the center occupancy detectors are. On September 1st, I mounted that monitor on the fascia. The camera and light for that area aren't installed yet. I'll do that with Dave's help when he comes to visit next week. I don't think I'll need a camera at the east end yard throat, since that area is easily visible from the control panel by just turning your head. There are a couple of things to point out on the control panel. First, I realized it would be a real pain to keep track of which trains are at which spots in the staging yard, so I cut up some post-it notes and added strips next to each set of occupancy indicators on the panel. Using a felt tip pen, the loco number can be written on the post-it near its location in the yard. For example, 5500 is parked at the east end of the yard on the back track, track 6. Behind it, 4550 is parked at the center occupancy detector on the same track. The arrow indicates the direction of travel. Meanwhile, 5503 is parked on the next track in at the west end of the yard. When trains move, the loco number can simply be crossed out and rewritten at the new location, as happened with loco 1395 at the right end of the yard. When the post-it gets too cluttered, it will be removed and replaced with a clean one. Not a perfect system by any means, but I think it will be workable. Since the panel faces Lexan, I can't use labeled magnets to show train positions. The other thing to note is a mistake I made in the panel graphics. I have Laurel, Montana marked as the right side of the yard and Scottsbluff/Crawford, Nebraska at the left side. I realized just a couple of days ago that those are reversed. Laurel should be at the left and Scottsbluff/Crawford should be at the right. Since changing the graphic would mean disassembling the panel, including disconnecting all the wires in the back and taking all the switches and LEDs out of the panel face, I simply printed the location names with a label maker and stuck them to the panel. I cringe every time I look at it, but I'm not about to spend the time I'd need to put a new graphic inside the panel. And so much for staging. Aside from the center camera, it's completely finished. We'll know after the next operating session in October if it's really usable or not. I sure hope it is. During the month of July, I started removing the lettering from one of the Milwaukee Road Mikados and re-identifying it as a Burlington loco. I finished that up this month. By August 11th, I had all the lettering removed from the locomotive. A week later, I was putting new decals on it. I selected 5513 as the number because that prototype loco was assigned to the Casper division of the Burlington during the era I model. By the 22nd, the locomotive was finished and back on the layout. Then I realized the number boards next to the headlight still showed the old number, 330. After this shot was taken, I took a dab of black paint and blocked out the old number. On August 11th, I posted a short video on how I cleaned the lettering off the Mikado. A link to it is in the description. On the 13th, Dave came to visit. We spent a very enjoyable morning visiting an old Burlington man, Chuck Eckert, at his home in downtown Casper. He's a walking encyclopedia of information about this part of the railroad. In the afternoon, we attached the last bit of styrene sheet I have to the end of the Worland Basin Peninsula. Being the good sport that he is, Dave agreed to do the hard work of crawling under the benchwork into the access hole at the center of the helix. We spent an hour and a half or so mounting the new section of backdrop, Dave working from inside and me from the outside. Later that evening, after Dave and his wife left for home, I removed all the clamps from the backdrop. I'll have to buy a few more sheets of styrene before I can continue with the backdrop. Back in the July update, I briefly mentioned visiting the Cheyenne train show at the end of June. While I was there, I picked up 4 of the Tangent 1917 tank cars. They cost me a total of about $190. Finally, in mid-August, I was ready to get them on the layout. I figured that would be easy, swap out the trucks and weather them. I was wrong. 3 of the 4 cars were either damaged or missing detail parts when I took them out of the box. The 4th one had all the parts, but some of the details had fallen off at some point during shipping and handling. The one shown here had severe damage to the stirrup step, which could only have happened during packaging. I contacted Tangent, and they were very apologetic and helpful. They didn't have spare parts to replace what was missing, but they sent me a whole new car instead at no charge. I wasn't going to cannibalize one car to finish another. The missing details wouldn't normally even be seen. So I pressed on with the cars I had on hand. I repaired the damaged car and then added the new trucks. That forced me to replace the couplers as well, since the Katy trucks made the car sit a few scale inches higher than the Tangent trucks did. Well, to make a long story short, with about 20 hours of work, I had all 4 cars finished, weathered, and on the track at Casper. During the month, I also completed this molasses car. And since I was working on cars anyway, I also added these 2 CNW boxcars to the layout. These were part of the collection Bill from Sheridan sold to me some months ago. Since Bill had assembled them before, new trucks and weathering was all it took to get these onto the layout. Along with everything else this month, I also installed the turntable at Thermopolis. I bought this first run Walther's 90-foot turntable off eBay back in June. The real town of Thermopolis didn't have a turntable. Local trains ran through the Wind River Canyon to Bonneville, where the locomotive was turned. Since I don't have Bonneville on the layout, the choices were to either run the trains all the way to Casper to turn them, run the locomotive backwards back to Grable, which we've been doing during operating sessions, or install a turntable at Thermopolis. I chose the last option. I decided to put the turntable here at the railroad east end of Thermopolis near the mouth of the Wind River Canyon. I began on August 21st by cutting the support for the turntable out of a chunk of plywood I had in the garage. I'm kinda surprised I didn't destroy it when I was cutting the turntable whole. Later that day I got the turntable base mounted, then on the 22nd I glued down the cork sheeting and trimmed it. I removed the turnout near Grable/Oren that was originally in place for the east staging lead to diverge from the Cody branch. Remember, that happens now just outside Powell at the bottom of the helix. Then I installed that turnout in Thermopolis for the new turntable lead. I laid the lead and caulked the turntable in place. There will be no other tracks off this turntable. It's only there to turn locomotives for the return to Grable. Wiring is yet to be done. And that was it for the month of August. A bit more progress than last month, I think. This month, I may finally get back to working on Powell. I still have that other Milwaukee locomotive to reletter, and I also bought a Walther's ice house that I'm going to kit bash to fit the Casper icing platform. I may start on that. And who knows? I may get a wild hair and drive to Denver and get some more styrene for the backdrops. Remember the Cronkite segment right after this? It's a special edition this month. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next month. This is a special edition of the Cronkite segment. The month of August saw the loss of several people in the hobby who had some impact on how I model in different ways. Roy Smith of Panama died of cancer early in the month. He billed himself as the only model railroader in Panama. Along with videos documenting his layout, Roy produced a program called Dispatch, which usually aired weekly. In one segment of these videos, he would highlight other modelers' YouTube channels. He featured mine in the December 8, 2020 show. This gave a tremendous boost to my channel, almost doubling the number of subscribers. I always enjoyed Roy's videos. The YouTube community of model railroaders has lost an important member. He will be missed by many in our community. I'll post a link to Roy's YouTube channel in the description below. We also lost Dave Husman this month. Dave was someone who was always ready to help out fellow modelers. He was active on the Model Railroad Hobbyist forums and had a loyal following there. Dave modeled a branch line of the Reading Railroad at the turn of the 20th century. He had a small YouTube channel with about 300 subscribers. Dave suffered a massive stroke while attending a sporting event. He passed peacefully a few days later. The link to Dave's YouTube channel is also in the description. The other person with whom I was familiar is Paul Dolkos. Paul didn't post in any of the forums I frequented, nor did he have a YouTube channel. Paul shared his modeling through the pages of Model Railroader magazine. He was a frequent contributor. The article which influenced me most was titled Last Days of the Duquesne, published in the March 1983 issue of Model Railroader. That layout was amazing in its detail and realism, all the more so because it was all of 5 by 10 feet in size. Paul died on August 9th at 85 years old. And sadly, that's the way it was, August 2024.